Okay. Welcome to the Real Bible Rob podcast. And I'm so delighted to have a special guest today, Jeremy Steele. And I love his TikTok content so much. And he reached out to creators recently, people with podcasts. And I jumped at the chance to interview him and he graciously agreed. So,
Yeah, I'm so excited to be
yes, thank you
here.
for joining me, Jeremy. Today we'll talk a little bit about, a little generally, but focus the conversation a little bit on young men and how we address them, young people in general. Uh, Jeremy's ministry is so focused on people who have been troubled by church and, finding ways to engage or staying engaged. I'll start this a little bit by just saying, church attendance statistics are notoriously hard to decipher, but people latch on to the things that they love about the statistics, like, they're looking for signs of a turnaround or that their favorite theology is garnering interest. And recently, Churchtrac showed an increase in millennial attendance led by men and a slight uptick in fundamentalist evangelical church attendance appears to be responsible for this. Is this a continuation of the young restless reform movement or not? In my public facing ministry and my work in the PC USA, I'm regularly told that I'm woke. And the reason why
I
the church
love
is
that because Jesus was also woke, so we're good.
we're good. And being woke means that's why the church is dying. Only if you are
Yeah,
more hardcore, then the church would grow.
I got it.
But the thing I always ask, and it's always centered around LGBTQ affirmation and women in ministry, and it's never really about Jesus or theology, right?
No.
And for every one of those guys, there's always 10 of them that just say the church is hateful and hypocritical. So I'd like to explore with Jeremy
Mhm.
whether, you know, where we should be spending our time and effort, and where do people who are turned off by church go? So welcome, Jeremy.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. I've learned a
no
ton from
problem.
you
I love this. It's
online.
great.
Thanks so much for joining. So I just want to just start, if you could just, for those of who are listening, who don't know who you are and what the focus of your ministry is, if you could just tell just a very brief of your church background, your ministry, and what your ministry has become today.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in the evangelical deep South, um, and I grew up in a mainline denomination, but in that part of the world, I was growing up in the 80s, 90s. In that part of the world, if you went to a United Methodist church or a Southern Baptist church in the Deep South, you could not tell the difference. I mean, there
Mhm.
are theological nuances, but the practical effect and really what they were practicing was evangelicalism, and bordering on sort of fundamentalist evangelicalism.
Mhm.
Um, that's where I grew up, and very in my teen years, I decided I was going to be a pastor. Um, Went to college and began being paid for ministry in my
Mhm.
sophomore year of college, and I've been a professional Christian ever since. I did a lot of ministry with teens and children for a long time. I went to seminary, was ordained in the United Methodist Church, um, all still in that sort of region, and those sort of bouncing around, right?
Mhm.
Sometime on the West Coast, sometime just in different places, and for a minute, I worked at uh, a mega church in that
Mhm.
area for a number of years, and and also sort of throughout my time, like when I was in college, I coded my home church's first website in 1997. Hand coded
Your tech
HTML
support.
1.0, right? Yeah, yeah. And so I've been involved in digital ministry really my entire career in some way or another. Um, while I was living in Silicon Valley, one of the things I was doing there was launching a spirituality app for people
Hmm.
who the target market was people who used to go to church and no longer do. That was a super fun thing to do. It's not something that you can download right now, but and then I, a couple of years ago, about I began working, doing some social media things
Hmm.
around on TikTok, and then obviously it branched out into other places. Um, Sort of just showing up uh, as honestly as I can as a skeptic pastor, as a pastor who's not sure if God exists, and a progressive pastor as well. And
I love
I've
your tagline too. Also,
right.
I'm
I'm a deep
skeptical.
skeptic, also a pastor.
Yes.
Uh, and yeah, and that kind of exploded. The first video, the first couple of days that I in this persona, I had 1,500 followers,
Hmm.
and it was very quickly 10,000, 30,000. And right now, like if you combine them all, like I'm over 200,000,
Yeah.
160 something, I think, on TikTok right now.
Yeah.
And that sort of birthed a community of people um, it sort of expresses itself in a bunch of different ways. We have sort of an
Hmm.
intentional smaller community that people are part of called Not Church.
Hmm.
And that group is full of people who have been hurt by the church, but are still interested in God in some way or another. We have people of all different religious identities in there.
Hmm.
So Christians and not Christians, evangelical, atheists, agnostics, Buddhists, like all kinds of different religious
Which is
identities.
cool.
Yeah, and it's great. And it's this like beautiful, respectful community where everybody's like learning and supporting each other and validating each other's spiritual experiences.
Hmm.
And also like being there for each other. We've got a holding space channel where people will post in the middle of the night, "Hey, I've got a hard thing going on. I'm going to the emergency room," and
Hmm.
people do whatever it is that they do in their spiritual practice to support that person. That's great. And then, it's part of that community. Another aspect of it is a podcast that I do called Unbelief.
Hmm.
And it's twice a week on Sundays. It's like a 30-minute to an hour long teaching, progressive
Okay. Oh,
take
okay. Uh-huh.
on the Bible normally, but looking at cultural background and that kind of stuff. And then the other episode is an interview style,
Hmm.
often with or with someone who is deconstructing, or with a scholar or somebody like that like I'm getting ready to record one today with somebody, a scholar that specializes in purity culture. So
Oh, okay.
um
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of where I am.
Oh, cool. That is so interesting. And just this reaching out from congregational ministry into making a bigger congregation.
Yeah, and that's my
Yeah.
full-time job as a pastor, right?
Yeah.
I'm a fully digital pastor.
But yeah, that's so awesome. Yeah, and that's what I'd like to kind of get around is
Sure.
who listens, and who's this directed at. But so just sort of maybe a big question is, what's
Sure.
your view of the state of engagement today? There was a lot of talk about the emerging church years ago. There's the
Yep.
Young Restless Reform movement, which took, had its rise
And
and crash.
it's been a long time since I heard emerging church. I've got all the books, but it's probably been 15
Yeah.
years since I've heard
Yeah.
anybody say that. That's
Brian
awesome. Yeah,
Brian
that's a
McClellan.
throwback
Yeah,
for
right.
sure.
But So those, yeah, and I'd say both of those movements have kind of had their peak, right? And so
Yeah.
what do you think is church engagement today? What does it look like for from your perspective? And does it matter?
I think I need you to define church engagement.
I guess when people are identifying with a with church at one time was always like, going on a Sunday morning,
Hmm.
doing becoming a member and that kind of thing. Certainly there's digital ministry like you're doing. One of the challenges has been, I always like to say, I have some uh, universalist friend,
Hmm.
Unitarian Universalist friends, and the problem they always describe is because they don't really believe in any one thing, that they don't have a unifying myth, you could say,
Sure.
that binds them together. So maybe just describe that. What's the thing that unifies or people causes people to want to come together in church today, in your opinion?
Um, uh, Not much. Um, I think it's really clear, like the church is on the decline,
Hmm.
and it's organized really, like I would say, like the typical, when you say church, what I think people think of, right? When they
Yeah.
hear that term, that's on the decline. It's the church's fault. Like the church has
Yeah.
ruined its place in culture. It's ruined its voice in people's lives. Um, and um, and to be completely honest, I that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Like my experience with church, um, is that I feel like if I can invest that money in almost any other nonprofit, I'd make a way bigger and better impact in the world.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so though I think spiritually, theologically, I have a different perspective. I think practically, I think that if most of the churches closed, it would actually be better for the world.
Hmm.
Um, and so when you ask like what brings people there, I don't think much. I think most of my experience and what brings people to church is a pattern, a
Hmm.
family history,
Yep.
and especially a family expectation, and then a sense of community. Even though that last one, um, it seems to be given less and less importance. Um, I don't know, less and less. It's less important than it should be, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, because like if there's been some really great research done, like when people are asked to describe their last experience of church,
Hmm.
um, the number one answer is I can't remember. The number two answer, which is almost tied, is boring.
Yes.
And I completely agree with them,
Yeah.
right? Church in general, and you know, I'm sure that yours is the exception, but is really boring. And
It can be, yeah.
yeah, and um yeah, so I think that I think that engagement in traditional understanding of church is dwindling. I don't
Yeah.
see that. I think this it's one of those lines. It's like, it's jagged, but it's the trend is down,
Yeah.
and I don't imagine that in my lifetime that trend will turn around. I think when you look at the sort of movement of history, we have that trend line going up and down over and over again. And you sort
Yes.
of,
Yeah.
Phyllis Tickles, gives this sort of 500-year cycle
Yeah.
that is really helpful. But yeah, I don't think, I don't see that happening. At the same time, um, my experience is that people who used to go to church and no longer do, which I think one of the stats that I saw was of the people who don't go to church, 70% of them used to at some point
Uh-huh.
in their past, used to regularly go. um, those people still feel like they are connected with God. They
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
do things to connect with
Right.
God, and and so I would say, like, if we're going to shift from like engagement in church to engagement in God or engagement with spirituality,
Hmm.
that's a whole other thing. I don't think that's on the decline at all.
No, I agree with that completely. I think the also the experiment of taking liturgical worship and replacing it with what I would say sort of Southern Baptist style, CCM music plus a really long sermon is kind of
Mhm.
burnout, right? That whole megachurch thing. And so my perspective too is that when I lived in Europe for 5 years, so I lived in Germany
Mhm.
for 5 years, and there 15-20% of the population are diehard, go to church every week, and so forth, and 80% it's a historical artifact, and you see this all
Right.
over Europe. And, of course, you go to the global south or what's happening in Africa and South America and parts of Asia today is the church is exploding and doing very, very well and so forth. And uh, is, are we becoming Europe where it's you just have a hardcore, and by the way, that 15-20% are also, usually super authoritarian, politically very conservative and nobody else cares? Or are we do you see or there are chances for us to maybe have a little bit more of a revival that you see in the global south happening right now?
I don't know. I've heard this conversation 1,000 times, and I
Hmm.
find it very um uh very racially and ethnically biased.
Hmm.
Um, because the argument is often that, like, that I hear is like, oh, we, like, Europe is the center, right?
Hmm.
We are patterning after them, and then somehow the global south is like where we were 20 years ago, or
Hmm.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't think that's a legitimate method, and I think it's really problematic,
Yes.
and,
Yeah.
and and on the lips of some people can be
Right.
incredibly racist.
Yeah, it can
and
be. Yeah.
um and
Or
so for me,
colonialist.
well, same.
Yeah.
Actually, I will say this: it's a colonialism is a subset of racism. And so I think that it's I don't think that at least I don't know. I'm not an anthropologist, so
Hmm.
I can't speak with any authority on that. But my personal sense is that each of those places is unique. They're on
Yeah.
their own unique path, and I don't think I I don't spend much time thinking about are we following, you know,
Which path are we
Europe's trend or
following?
whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we're following our own path, and
Yeah.
we are on the path we were on because we walked here.
Yes. Yeah, and that's true, is that I think we are different in the United States, and we're different regionally, certainly. I mean,
Right. Well,
yeah,
and Brazil is different than Ecuador, is different
yes,
than
yeah,
South Africa is different than China, like every place.
yes. Okay, great. Yeah, okay. And we have to find our place, or, as Brian McLaren likes to say, we have to make the road by walking, right? So we have to do
Right.
that for
Yeah, yeah.
ourselves. Yeah. Um, okay, so do you do you think that we have a spiritual crisis, especially among young men in America today?
Hmm. I think we just have a spiritual. Well, gosh, no. I think we have a church crisis.
Uh-huh.
I think we don't have a spiritual crisis, but it's interesting to me when people talk categorically about young men,
Mm-hmm.
or young women or whatever, because uh, I mean, like, for example, uh, young young people, um, 30% of them identify as LGBTQ,
Mm-hmm.
right? And and I think that that's like it's one small factor that I can point to say like there is not a monolithic young men,
Right.
right? And like what people when I worked in church, when people talked about young men, they often were meaning straight, white, young Christian men in
Yeah.
in a mainline or evangelical context. That's
Yeah.
what they meant, and that is a tiny fraction. There are way more queer young adults
Yes, there
than
are.
young men that meet that criteria.
Right, but they're not
So,
fighting as hard.
yes, and now do we is the uh, small sample size of YouTube comments
Yeah.
representative of a crisis among young men?
Uh-huh.
Yes. I would say that I can't describe young men because I think that that's so diverse
Yeah.
that it's maybe not a helpful distinction. But and two, like if I got click and look at everybody's profile picture, I mean, there does seem to be a disproportionate amount of white young men who are
Hmm.
complete theological jerks
Yes.
in the comments.
Uh-huh.
But again, I've got a small sample size, and I don't know that I can even generalize that. But I can tell you from my experience, yeah, that's a problem. And I think the other thing is like when you said, I think you said spiritual crisis.
Hmm.
Um, I I'm not even sure what I would mean if I said that because um, when I'm in church world, a spiritual crisis uh, is tied oftentimes to church attendance,
Yeah.
right? The
Right.
crisis, which is interesting because it's institutions generally exist to preserve the institution, and
Yeah.
so a spiritual crisis is tracked by how many butts are in the institution,
Yeah.
right? And which I would say most of the people I know that left church have a way better life and are way better people as a result of it. And so a spiritual crisis and are way more deeply
Yeah.
spiritual as a result of leaving the church. And so in some ways, a spiritual crisis to me you might define that as that we've got too many young men
Yeah.
in church. We need more to leave so that they would have a deeper relationship with
Uh-huh.
God, which again, I know nobody in the church world would ever describe it that way. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting concept.
And in my experience in comments, for example, but also just in person too, when I meet people of this nebulous group, is uh, if they're willing to engage and they're willing to engage very intelligently, some of them can, um, uh, there's a certain fraction that you reach a little bit of a shalom with. And to me, I find that extremely gratifying.
Hmm.
It's a pretty small number. It's a small number of a small number, right?
Uh-huh.
But just even it's sort of like chaplaincy or that one-to-one ministry. If you can make one person's life a little bit better and a little more spiritually connected, then that's good, right?
Yeah.
And I just so I part of this is where do I where do people like you and me, but where do I put my energy? I put my energy
Mm.
in that kind of a person where even just moving them one little click is a good thing, or do I uh, put my energy into a broader audience that's because I can identify with these young
Yeah.
restless reform people, right? Because
Hmm.
I know their language and I know how to
Yeah.
talk to them. But is that worthwhile or not? Right? So
Yeah. I everybody's got their own uh community that they feel equipped, no, maybe not equipped, that their life experience
hmm.
and personal perspective enables them to serve the
Hmm.
most easily. Um I don't even know what Young Restless Reformed is, but it's
Yeah.
definitely not the ones that I'm most equipped, clearly,
Yeah.
to be with. I think my whole life I felt like, well, not my whole life, my whole professional life in ministry, I felt like church people are really weird, and I didn't
Yeah.
really want to be friends with many of them.
Uh-huh.
Always a large percentage of my friends have been atheists, agnostics, or
Yeah.
I don't care. Um, and so uh yeah, so my life is oriented in that direction because a couple of things. I feel like if you want to listen to hymns,
Uh-huh.
and if you want to hear some person talk at you for 15 to 45 minutes and you want to
Hmm.
say old prayers, that niche is being super served,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. It's
Like
true.
it's easy to find that. Like you don't even have to go to church anymore. Every one of those churches streams online,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh. Yep. Including
Um,
mine.
Right. Which is, and this is great. I'm like really happy that all of those people who want to do that, there is, there's literally, as far as I can tell, no place in America that you can't find that.
Hmm.
Right. And so, but there are so many people. And like, as we were talking earlier, the statistics say more and more
Hmm.
that that's not that doesn't work for them for a
Yeah.
number of reasons. Many of those reasons are because of what happens in those places and has happened
Yes.
to them in those places
Hmm.
that they can no longer go there,
That's what
right?
I usually find. It's not the hymns. It's not in fact, a lot of people who like sort of this traditional, what we call traditional, I hate the word traditional, but liturgical worship are perfectly fine. In fact, find great beauty in it, but they just can't get through the door because the door is a doorway into pain and
Yeah.
just wanting them to want to run the other way. And
Yeah, and I think the other thing is uh that's also a very narrow um pathway to enlightenment, transcendence,
hmm.
understanding. And though some people, that's the right pathway for them,
Uh-huh.
churches put so much time, energy, and effort into this one very narrow pathway
Mm.
um, that if you want to go to a church and find God in nature, that church is putting probably zero time, money, energy, effort into taking people into nature and finding God there,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
They're putting half or usually three-quarters of their time, energy, money, and effort into helping people connect with God through music, prayer, liturgy, sacraments,
Hmm. Yeah.
and preaching on Sunday morning. And if you are, and sometimes a version of that on a Wednesday night that doesn't include the time, it doesn't include the music,
Yeah.
but like or the sacraments, but it does have teaching, it does have prayers, right? Like, but
Yeah.
again, that is such a narrow, like you just look at Christian history, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, yes, that is something that people did in a lot of different times. But there are so many other pathways that are long, ancient,
Hmm.
well-worn pathways to
Right.
connecting with God that almost every church I have not even worked at, ever seen, experienced, and I've spoken in churches all over the country.
Hmm.
Um, most of them spend zero effort or energy on any other path,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so like I guess we sort of got into this by like who we serve. I guess I feel like I'm trying to serve everyone else,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
If you don't want to go to church, if a call and response prayer is not your thing,
Uh-huh.
if whatever, right? Like we're good. Like that's who
Yeah.
I'm with. And most of the people who don't or sometimes can't, like used to but can't anymore,
Uh-huh.
it's because the church has deeply hurt them or their friends.
Yeah. So as you're talking about what do you think is the breakdown between the people who are in that liturgical worship world and just resist it because of past hurt or just because it doesn't touch them anymore? Is there a breakdown between that or not?
What do you mean by a breakdown?
Meaning, are most of the people that aren't uh, um fed by liturgical worship because of church experiences that were hurtful, that put them in a box, that kind of thing? Or is it just because, that's what grandma did and I'm tired of doing what grandma did?
I mean, no, I don't think. I think that there's people like that. Uh, I mean, even when I worked in churches that, obviously did those things,
Hmm.
um, when I talked to normal people who weren't, you know, on the platform leading a thing, like they came for the community.
Yeah.
They
Hmm.
didn't come for the liturgy. Like a handful of them did. And I think
Hmm.
it's just a personality thing, right? We're
Yeah.
just such different um we're so such different people. The other thing that I find is really interesting is that um the liturgy there is at least in my experience in the community that I serve now and the stuff that I've done
Hmm.
before, ritual almost seems to be a human need,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, and I think that's like taking the mystical, the divine, or the emotions, whatever you've got, and putting physical handles onto it,
Hmm.
right? And so many of the people who are bored by liturgy,
Hmm.
um, or don't connect well with liturgy, ritual, right?
Yeah.
Ritual works for it, but it works in wherever it is that they find connection. So like
Uh-huh.
it might be the ritual for them might be going out, putting their feet in the grass and
Right.
saying things, noticing things, even writing things down and burying them in the ground or whatever it is. But like ritual makes that experience a little bit even more tangible, not tangible,
Hmm. Yeah.
able to engage more deeply with
Yeah.
or people whose social action is their way, their path towards God to the divine. Like again, there's ritual that comes in with that, or meditation. Again,
Hmm.
ritual is different, and I think that's a little the idea of ritual is a bigger human thing.
Hmm.
So I want to sort of make that distinction that I'm not saying ritual, the concept of ritual is not that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's a great way to put it because there seems to be this human need for ritual for whether you say like meditation or sticking your feet in the mud or liturgy or whatever. And how do we and then there's been such an anti-ritual
yeah.
aspect to church. Um, and there,
But like,
yeah, go
but
ahead.
I remember, one of the things that I really enjoyed was creating ritual that was not sort of playing with it in a way. Like
Hmm.
we I did an Ash Wednesday thing,
Hmm.
and we actually patterned it after like a Tenebrae service.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But at the very end, we had burlap, and we asked everybody to take the burlap and to put it under their clothes next to their skin and to wear
Uh-huh.
that for Lent. We talked about like sackcloth and ashes,
Yeah.
and but see again that like that's a ritual
Hmm.
for sure, very much ritualized, but it um but for and it was very much connected to like ancient ritual. This is
Yes.
not something that like I just was like sitting in my office and be like, what is a cool thing we could do? No, no, no. I'm like, this is like
Right.
way older than any ritual that we do except for maybe the sacraments of
Uh-huh.
communion and baptism. But like, yeah, so yeah, yeah.
I think that's very interesting because there are there's definitely a desire to have that touch and feel. I often say at the communion table, I say, this is the place where the body and blood of Christ come together, with you, and you get to experience the
Hmm.
communion in this very visceral way. And
Hmm.
that touches people because then there's this
Hmm.
touch and feel aspect
Yeah,
to it. And churches,
yeah,
of course, when you've got communion is that little tiny cup and the little tiny wafer in it that gets passed out to everybody.
right,
Uh, and it lasts for 1 minute, that kind of, who needs that, right? So,
right.
but yeah, and it's not necessarily, it's being creative, certainly.
Hmm.
But it also means that, well, I can experience it 10 different ways. I,
Yeah,
uh, I don't need to, uh, it doesn't have to drive me to one theology or whatever, because
right,
most people
right.
don't give a damn about theology, right?
Yeah, no,
The more I find that out is that the people that argue theology with me, like you said, are just such a tiny subset. Most
yeah,
people
such a
just want to
tiny
feel
thing.
connected. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't really have time for that. Like,
Yeah.
because for me, the thing that I am most certain of
Hmm.
is that I am wrong about at least half of what I believe.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know which half. If I knew which half, I'd try not to believe it, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea that there is some systematized, correct set of beliefs that all
Yeah.
fit together perfectly
Uh-huh.
seems to me a complete waste of time and not actually possible.
Yeah.
Um, and to argue over these theological nuances, I feel
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
are it's a fool's errand. I mean,
It is. Yeah.
people who are theology nerds, like that's great. I also have been around people who will argue nuances of Dungeons and Dragons. It also does not seem useful to me, nor
Right.
do I care to engage in it. But yeah, and so like I don't like I find belief and understanding and big theological concepts and perspectives helpful, but in no way important as to the level of like we're going to argue this and because I know I'm right, or or even like who is right is the most important thing,
Yeah.
right? Like my thing is like if whatever you believe, it's got to have like one of three things. It's got to be helping you become the best version of yourself,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
right? It's got to help you find a purpose greater than yourself, or it's got to help you experience transcendence.
Yeah.
Like if your religious beliefs aren't doing one of those three things, then they are completely
Yeah,
useless.
it's right.
Well, if they do, if they just are, if they don't have a negative version of that, fine. Believe what you want. Doesn't matter.
Right,
Like,
right.
but like, but honestly, like that's so for me, I could care less if I believe that God is all powerful, all knowing,
Hmm.
all of the things, the omni, whatever,
Right, yeah.
and that I am 100% sure that God does not um uh, predestine people to hell,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like I can hold both of those things, even though if you take them to their logical conclusions, they end up in this hard, very
Right.
illogical contradiction that you've got to work yourself around. But I could care less about working myself around that because you know what? one of those might be completely wrong.
Right.
And
It
both of
kind of
them
doesn't
might.
matter.
So what I've got to do is like, does this match my experience of life and in the world,
Yeah,
the universe, God,
exactly.
whatever? Yes, great. Then if it does, we're gonna go. And if it does, it help me become a better version of myself? Okay, great. I'm great. Okay.
Yeah.
Does it call me to like fight for justice? Wonderful. Let's do that. Let's believe
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it's not any of that stuff, yeah, gosh, it's
So much of this
just
is
fight in the YouTube comments. Just fight in the YouTube comments. Have a blast.
so much of this is building castles in the air,
Yeah.
and I do that, because of my Calvinist uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
denomination and because of what I understand about Reformed theology, what I understand about the confessions. I realize that people have been building castles in the air since the beginning. They always have. And that if you fight for a castle in the air, it's just worthless. It doesn't really.
Well, and like every yeah, you're PC USA, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm United Methodist. Every every denomination that I know well enough to know anything about their like foundational documents
Yeah.
all will have documents that disagree with each other,
Oh, yes.
right? And so like if we can't even
Including the Bible.
if we're gonna choose a founding document, the like creeds or whatever, right? We can't even choose one. Like we're gonna choose multiple that contradict with each other. Then like,
Uh-huh.
why are we? Well, anyway, I'm
Even
sorry.
internally, I mean, even the Nicene Creed is a total compromise document,
Sure.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I did want to ask you maybe to close things down a little bit, as I've been following lately somebody named Pastor Bethany,
Okay.
and she's a UMC pastor out of Arcata, California, near Eureka,
Hmm.
and she carries a cup and she walks through the park and she goes, "Walk with me for a minute." And
Uh-huh.
she has these really, I don't know if you've ever seen her stuff
I
or,
think I have, but I can't. It's not in the front of my head right now.
yeah. And I just think about, and what she said, it's always like something in what was in the lectionary that week or something like that,
Okay.
or what she preached on. And I just find it so engaging because and she has some parachurch stuff that she does as well. So I just and to me I look at what she does and I go, "Oh, well maybe this is a way that you can be sort of liturgical church doing the churchy things, but
Hmm.
also engaging with a broader, a broader group of people."
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you've kind of gone, you've done both, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you're now completely digital.
Hmm.
Do you offer any advice for how, how you can have your feet in both worlds or be
Yeah.
able to serve a bigger audience? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I've got a seminar I do for churches, for church groups about just that.
Hmm.
I think I think that the low hanging fruit for most churches is just to the very first thing is just to see the social media, internet, whatever,
Hmm.
um, the stuff that happens there as legitimate and fully real ministry
Hmm.
as what
Okay.
happens in the sanctuary.
Hmm.
Because a lot of folks are focused on, a lot of church people will focus on, like, we will do these things
In
so
order
that
to bring
they,
them in.
yeah, yeah. Well, they'll ask questions. They're like, well, how many people actually come to church as part of that? I'm like, well, no. This is church.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not trying to get them to the real thing.
Yeah.
That is also real. And that is a really fundamental perspective shift that is that it takes a minute to do, right? So like if somebody asked you for a prayer and or said
Uh-huh.
some need that they had, you might offer to pray for them in the sanctuary right there. If somebody expresses a need online, you could
Hmm.
write a prayer as a comment, and that is just as legitimate and fully
Oh, yeah.
real ministry as being in the sanctuary and praying for that person. And like, and we could just spend all day extrapolating. This happens in a sanctuary. This can happen online. This
Hmm.
thing online is just as real and legitimate and fully
Yes.
formed as the thing in the sanctuary. And so, because I think the other thing that's so there's two sort of starting points. That's starting point A. The other side that you have to do is realize that if you want to go where people are,
Hmm.
um, it's in social media,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The
That's where they are now.
the 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 giant percentage there's a giant percentage of people time that is spent
Yeah.
on Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or Facebook or whatever, and they are there. They are not at your
Hmm.
church building.
Hmm.
They are not in your sanctuary. Even the people that are in your sanctuary, they
Uh-huh.
spend way more time. They probably spend
That's true.
20 or 100 times. No, not 100, but probably 20 times the amount of time they spend in your sanctuary every week,
Yes, that's
they
true.
spend in social media. And
Hmm.
so if you want to go and do ministry with people, like, why would you not go there?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's a great point. I mean, I minister in, IRL,
Right?
a few dozen people, right?
Right.
And online, uh, anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000 a week,
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah. And
yeah,
I think that people don't understand the scale of it. And
yeah.
I don't know. And I just think it's the legitimacy. Like, basically, social and digital things are seen as an advertisement for the real thing,
Yes, yeah. Good point.
um,
Yeah.
and a pathway to the real thing. And when you do that, the real ministry is not going to happen on
Yeah,
social
yeah.
media.
I mean, there's something for embodiment, and that's something you don't get in
Oh,
social
yeah,
media. And
for sure.
I don't know how to cross that over, where,
Yeah, I'm actually part of a fellowship that's exploring. It's a stupid name, but phygital ministry, physical and digital,
uh-huh.
and how I'm one of the digital ministries that's crossing over into physical expressions. A lot of the people in the group are in physical ministries that are crossing over into digital expressions because
Uh-huh.
embodiment is important,
Yeah.
for sure. It's just not the same.
Right.
It's so it's all about mediated communication and experience.
Uh-huh.
And the less channels you have and the less synchronicity you have, the more mediated and the narrower that experience becomes. And so definitely there is a need for in-person physical things, um but uh yeah, we could get that's another whole soapbox.
Hmm. Yeah. So, what are the best ways for people, say, listening to this, to engage with you? Is it on TikTok, or is it, do you have any websites
Well, if
that I
they're
can put in the
listening,
notes?
if they're listening to this,
Yeah.
their podcast person, the podcast is called Unbelief. And if you
Unbelief.
just
Okay.
search Unbelief wherever you do podcast stuff, you'll
Okay.
find it. Um, and but if it's people that find themselves in the place, or maybe it's not even that, maybe it's their kid, whatever,
Uh-huh.
uh, a need for spiritual community that is open and supportive and exploring, but nobody's telling them they're going to hell because they believe the wrong thing or that
Right.
they believe the wrong thing, period. Um, it's called Not Church. And so
Okay. Yeah.
we is patreon.com/skeptic pastor. We're
Okay.
committed to not being donation based.
Hmm.
So everything we do is pay for what you get. So if you want to
Okay.
have a pastoral meeting with me, you can pay for it. Everything else has a free way, because we're not
Okay.
about being part of the capitalistic systemic
Yeah.
injustice. But uh, so that on patreon.com/skeptic pastor, it's $3 a month to join the group,
Okay.
to join our faith community, basically. And you can pay more for different features, but yeah. And what I always say is, like, it's everything I kind of hoped I could find in a faith community my whole life.
Hmm.
Um, and I really think you'd love it. Uh, but if it doesn't work for you, just stop paying. Like it's $3. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, and I think that you're definitely someone that you can see online, and so I guess maybe my final question for you is, uh, how do you feel about the 2 minute TikToks that you do versus podcasts versus other ways to engage? Do you see them all as part of like an ecosystem, or
Yeah.
do you find different audiences for different things? How do you think about that?
Um, it's an ecosystem. So we are, I call it the Numa community.
Yeah.
It exists in a lot of different permutations, offers things in a lot of different ways, like the Belief podcast, Not Church, my Skeptic Pastor content. We're working on in-person events as well. And I find that like they all seem, I mean, it's like a church,
Hmm.
right? The sermon and the Sunday school class and the board meeting and the mission trip and the children's time and like all the different things that you do as a church.
Hmm.
They're all different things, but they're part of a whole.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, and I will put tag some of the things you just mentioned in the
Thank you
notes
so much.
here. Yeah, and if you can let people know about me a little bit, if you think that they would be
Absolutely.
interested in, I'm Real Bible Rob on almost everything. So
That's great. Well, when you post it, we'll do some cross post promotion stuff.
that'd be awesome. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
no
And
problem.
yeah, and I the fact that you reached out and said, "Hey, do you have a podcast?" And gave people like me an opportunity to engage with you is just I think just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Yeah,
I love creators and I feel like, you know, the best path forward for all of us is pitching in together. So I'm
yeah.
glad I get to do this.
We're kind of on the same team. I always say
That's
that
right.
even if I have somebody who I don't agree with at all, I go,
Right.
we're on the same team. Let's think that
Yeah.
way. Good. Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. And yeah, and let's just I'll tag you, you tag me.
Sounds good. Thanks,
Okay.
Rob.
All right. Take care.